Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Gluing Back Together the Shards of China Between Two Wars 1925 Part 2 of 2 by Time Ghost History. If you want to check out my previous reactions to other Time Ghost History videos, remember the playlist card will be at the top. Just click on it and be able to access them. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
The revolutionary movement in China has been growing steadily since the 1880s, and by the 19-teens, a man has emerged as one of its most important leaders. He is a remarkably complex man called Sun Yat-sen. In 1925, he dies, leaving his unification project unfinished in the hands of two ideologically opposed potential successors, Chiang Kai-shek and Wang Jingwei. Welcome to...
Wait, before we begin, Chiang Kai-shek, I think I remember that name. It was a president who fled the civil war between the communists and the democratic forces, and he fled to Taiwan, and him and his generals and whoever else, they helped Chiang Kai-shek create the new nation of Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I'm not sure about it, but yeah, I think it's the same guy, or maybe it's someone different. Yeah.
Between Two Wars, a chronological summary of the interwar years, covering all facets of life, the uncertainty, hedonism, and euphoria, and ultimately humanity's descent into the darkness of the Second World War. I'm Indy Nidell. In the early 1920s, China has fallen into dozens of dominions controlled by a number of generals and political leaders, often referred to as the warlords. If the country shall ever come together again to defend itself against the foreign forces pulling it apart, someone has to take the initiative and be the glue for that.
And the small boy emperor, the child, he's still a child during this time. He hasn't grown up old enough to understand what's going on, probably. Yeah, it's terrible.
So, let's make another brief excursion into the years before the 1920s, and then return to 1925, when China has arrived at a turning point that will not end the bloodshed, but direct the sanguine rivers of war towards the conflicts that will eventually become part of World War II. Now, Sun Yat-sen is in many ways the quintessential revolutionary. He takes an interest in social studies, religion, and philosophy already at an early age. Age 13, he is sent to his elder brother in Honolulu, Hawaii, to study and learn English. When he returns to China at 17, he is on a path to adopting many Western values that are already revolutionary in and of themselves in the China of the 1880s. He rebels against traditional values and Chinese religion. He is appalled at how ancient healing methods and superstition do not help the suffering of those ailing when there are already more effective modern treatments.
Interesting. Okay, so he's setting aside traditional medicine and traditional beliefs and how society is brought up in China. Okay, it's understandable that after visiting or after staying in America and America's colony of Hawaii, he has learned the modern way of living and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite understandable that maybe he might look down upon his own people and the way they live their lives and what's going on in China. But I don't think he should have completely look down upon traditional medicine, for instance. There is some properties to traditional medicine. We just have to further research on it, investigate on it, make it up to standard with the modern requirements, and then also produce it in mass quantities for consumption by the consumers. Modernize the way it's been sold, modernize the way it's been packaged and the way it's being tested, and people will buy into it. So I wouldn't look down upon traditional medicine. There is value in it, just like in our westernized form of medicine. There's value in it. You just need to be patient with it, and you might actually find it working quite surprisingly. So yeah, in terms of him letting go of his cultural identity as a Chinese person, that's not for me to discuss about. That's his own personal choice. It's what he did. He's been living in this Western life for a long time, so he sees value in it, and he wants the Chinese to also emulate in that same kind of thought process. And I think it's kind of worked, especially in our modern times. As you see China as it is right now, it's more a consumer-based economy. They want the latest trends, the best fashion trends, the technology, the cars. They even make it themselves. All of these modern, Western standard kind of trinkets and materialistic aspirations have ballooned, to high levels in China, and it's also been incorporated in their culture as well. So, what Sun Yat-sen is trying to do, maybe it's a bit too extreme. Maybe he should have also tried just to, merge the two cultures together, just like how it's been done right now in modern China.
He converts to Christianity and studies Western medicine in Hong Kong, graduating as a medical doctor from Hong Kong College of Medicine for Chinese, which will later become the University of Hong Kong. But his medical career will be short-lived. He is increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress in China, and after only 2 years has abandoned his profession to focus on bringing China into the modern age. He writes and agitates for a greater devotion to technological development, modern economic principles, and democratic reform. He takes an active part in several of the uprising in the 1900s and is repeatedly exiled, but Sun Yat-sen keeps returning and soon becomes a leading figure in the growing revolutionary movement. The political views he espouses on the way are, at least from a Western perspective, somewhat odd. For Sun Yat-sen, it is a pragmatic mixture of what he believes are the best parts of republicanism, nationalism, conservatism, socialism, democratic liberalism, and militant radicalism, which he believes should be the basis of a modernized, democratic, and stable China.
So he tried to, take apart a bit from every single ideology and try to make a brand new one. Okay, I like that. Yeah, it's good.
Actually, this is a good moment to point out that Sun Yat-sen is the only Chinese politician in history that has always, and is still in 2019, viewed as a hero and father of the nation in both the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China in Taiwan. And it is what happens in 1911 that marks the moment when he rises to that position. Now, a series of uprisings mark the beginning of the Chinese Revolution. As the revolution breaks out, Sun is chosen as the first provisional president of the Republic of China. However, the role as president has been promised to Yuan Shikai, the leader of one of the most powerful military factions, if he can bring about the peaceful abdication of the boy emperor. Yuan delivers in 1912, and the 6-year-old Emperor Puyi abdicates. Well, technically. In actuality, he is abdicated by his regent, and he himself only finds out many years later. He becomes a ceremonial prisoner in the northern part of the Forbidden City, together with his large suite of servants, who do not dare tell him that he is no longer the emperor.
I don't even think this kid knew what was going on when he abdicated the first emperor, that child. I don't even think he knew what was going on. Probably his handlers were telling him to sign this document, to say these words, and then the abdication would be complete, and you'd become the caretaker emperor, and until that emperor becomes of age or something like that. And then his power was also usurped by the revolutionaries. Probably also trying to make sure that, this emperor person does not, gain power once he's old enough to understand what's going on in his kingdom. So yeah, everybody was handled by someone else, and really these kids, they just didn't know what was going on.
He is left there for a very specific reason. Some of the revolutionaries hope that the empire can still be restored. In any case, Sun steps down and Yuan is made the new provisional president, and eventually the first president proper when the republic is proclaimed. However,
was he voted in? I haven't heard Indian Idol say that there was a vote, a democratic vote, because Sun Yat-sen, he advocated for democratic change and stuff like that. He was emulating what he was seeing in the Western countries. So where is it here? Just proclaiming yourself as a president doesn't mean that you're a president. You didn't go through the proper processes to become president.
However, it is in fact Yuan who is trying to become the new emperor, and he now begins to intrigue against the other leaders. Under all of this factionalism and personal ambition, the revolution predictably falls apart, and it's back to civil war. Sun allies himself with the newly formed Chinese National Party, the Kuomintang. In 1913, Sun, together with Song Joran, the leader of the Kuomintang, tries to overthrow Yuan Shikai but fails. Sun exiles himself to Japan. Song is assassinated. Yuan proclaims himself emperor, and the country descends into absolute political chaos. The next years take China through a roller coaster of republicanism, restoration, revolution, and counter-revolution. Now, if you want to know more about the years immediately after the Chinese Revolution and the rise of the warlords, I made a special episode about China during World War I in my Great War YouTube series. You can find a link in the description. But for now, let's jump ahead to the 1920s and Sun Yat-sen. By this time, the country is split between two factions. The warlords in the north, in what is known as the Beiyang government, the officially recognized Chinese state, and a variety of warlords, political parties, and revolutionary factions that are loosely united under the Kuomintang, now led by Sun Yat-sen himself since his return to China in 1917. Now, the Kuomintang has two factions that are, for all practical purposes, irreconcilably different. On the left, there is a socialist faction that, already before the Russian revolutions, hoped for China to become the first socialist state in the world. On the right is a liberal faction that wants China to become a democratic nation-state republic, modeled pretty much on France or the USA. Sun moves between the two factions and is very much the glue that keeps them together. In 1915, he even reaches out to the Russian Bolsheviks for help to bring about the envisioned socialist state in China, but this plan doesn't bear fruit. When the Beiyang government has managed to unite the warring factions in the north, Sun moves further to the right and abandons his plans for a purely socialist Chinese state.
This guy was doing a lot of political maneuvering. You don't really know where he stands. He's in both camps, and he's also not in both camps. How can you trust someone like this? But anyways, he kept stability in China in his time, and it's amazing, really.
One of the driving reasons for this is that he doesn't believe China is caught in a class struggle between rich and poor, because as he says, the country is made up of the poor and the poorer. And his opposition to militarism, which he sees as a driving force behind warlordism, imperialism, and the communist revolution. But renewed violent unrest erupts when the Versailles Treaty grants the formerly German enclaves on Chinese territory to Japan. Widespread student protests coalesce into the May 4th movement that gives birth to a slew of new political parties. And within all this, as the Kuomintang look like they are moving away from socialism, in 1921, the Communist Party of China is formed by, among others, a young man who is the son of a wealthy farmer. His name is Mao Zedong. So now, Sun is faced with a dilemma here. While he tries to avoid a militarist direction of the Kuomintang, Everyone else is embracing the idea of forcefully implementing change and sovereignty with the help of a strong military. Sun sees the risk of more factionalism and renewed factional wars, and in an about-face, embraces militarism and reaches out to the Western powers for help to raise an army to unite China and put an end to the warlords.
Yeah, the guy is a political chameleon. You know, one day he's here, the next he's there. You really don't know where he's standing. Yeah, he's a politician.
The Western powers are lukewarm to the idea, so when they fail to make a definite commitment, Sun instead reaches out to the Russian Bolsheviks once again. His right-hand man in all of this is a popular political hero of the Xinhai Revolution of 1911, Wang Jingwei. Now, Wang has worked closely with Sun since they met in 1905 when both were exiles in Japan. Wang is one of the most prominent figures of the Kuomintang left wing. He is an excellent public speaker and was material in agitating for the Xinhai Revolution. He is strongly opposed to Western imperialism and has based his political ideology on a combination of Chinese nationalism and Russian anarchism. Wang is a great supporter of the idea of cooperating with the Bolsheviks. Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin see this as an opportunity to increase their influence in the region and perhaps even incorporate China into the Communist International. But the new Chinese Communist Party is at this point fewer than 100 members strong and too weak to be a viable inroad for the Russians. So they decide to try to sway the Kuomintang to the left. Adolf Zhov, one of their main Bolshevik diplomats, is now the Soviet-Russian ambassador to China. Zhov starts to work with Sun and Wang to restructure the Kuomintang as a rigidly organized party based on the military command-style structures developed by Lenin for the party in Russia. Meanwhile, by early 1923, the communists still only have a few hundred members, but they have strong ties to the left wing within the 50,000 members of the Kuomintang. As more and more Kuomintang socialists move over to the communists, the Bolsheviks see a risk of a rift in their plan. They drive for a union between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party of China, CPC. So, at their request, the communists, including Mao Zedong, join the Kuomintang and become dual members of both parties. The Bolsheviks make it a condition for continued support that this arrangement is formalized. Zhov and Sun meet in Shanghai and sign an agreement that formally creates the First United Front. While Sun...
Yeah, this is not looking good for the right side, the liberal side. Because now the left side with the socialists and the communists, they're having support from Russia. Probably they're also going to have military support and technology and information, and they're already giving them, you know, the operations and, you know, structure of how to build your party, how to build your future society, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it seems like the right side of the Kuomintang, I can't pronounce it correctly, guys, I'm sorry, but yeah, the right side, they don't have support from anyone really. It's only them who are, you know, still advocating for democratic change, for liberal ideals and capitalism and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's looking bad. I don't see how Sun Yat-sen is going to fix this issue, because he's chameleon going back and forth like that is just so confusing.
And Wang are comfortable with this arrangement. Another of Sun's closest advisors is silently opposed to it. He is Chiang Kai-shek, a graduate from a military prep school in Japan who joined the revolutionary forces as an artillery officer in 1911 and is a veteran of many of the civil wars. Since then, he has sided with Sun and has by now emerged as one of the leaders of the right wing of the party. He is also a strong advocate for increased militarism and willing to go along with the arrangement if it gets them an army. And he's about to get what he wants. With the arrangement between the CPC and the Kuomintang in place, the Bolsheviks are willing and ready to militarize the party and start providing them with weapons, finances, and instructors. But to create a truly independent military force, they need loyal officers, and they cannot be recruited from the warlord armies. In 1924, on Russia's instructions and with their active help, Sun founds the Whampoa Military Academy. Chiang Kai-shek is made the director of the school and recruits over 1,000 students who will form the core of the Kuomintang army leadership. At the end of 1924, the party is on a secure path of preparation for a massive attack on the Beiyang armies in the north. But Sun is by now ailing from undiagnosed and untreated late-stage gallbladder cancer that has metastasized in his liver. In late January 1925, he travels into enemy territory in Beijing for an exploratory laparoscopy. Finding his liver riddled with tumors, the doctors estimate that he has only 10 days left to live. They still treat him with a novel radiation treatment using radium, but it's not successful, and Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who has been so opposed to Chinese traditional medicine, returns to the South and gives it a last chance after all. But this too has no effect. On March 12, 1925,
Yeah, don't look down upon the traditional medicine. Give it a chance. You should have given it a chance far more earlier. But yeah, like I said before, we need to find ways to incorporate it into our modern era and requirements for medicine to be sold in pharmacists, in hospitals. We got to do something like that.
Sun Yat-sen dies at 58, leaving the Kuomintang without a leader and still precariously split between left and right. Before he dies, it is Wang Jingwei that takes down his last will and testament, which does not suggest a new named leader for the party. Still, it is assumed that Wang will be his heir. This, however, is not what Chiang Kai-shek and the others on the right think. For the remainder of the year, both of them, and many others, vie for control over the party. However, they do continue to prepare for war, and this keeps them united for now. As 1925 ends, the Kuomintang army has been raised and are just waiting for their marching orders. But before that, Wang and Chiang are about to clash properly. And when we return to China in 1927, we will see how that goes. But let me say this much already now. The complex web of alliances, enmities, ideological incompatibilities, as well as interference from Russia, by now the USSR, and Japan will make for a very bumpy road that will ultimately lead to the Pacific and Asian theaters of World War II. If you have not already, please subscribe to Time Ghost and support us on Patreon so we can make ever more and ever more in-depth historical content. If you'd like to see an episode on our World War II channel where Chiang Kai-shek and Wang Jingwei clash once again, you can click right here for that. Now, going back to 1925 and looking at China, I think pretty much everyone can agree the glass is not half full, the glass is not half empty, the glass is empty. Goodbye. See you next time.
Okay guys, that was gluing back together the shards of China between two wars, 1925, part 2 of 2. Yes, the warlords have, fractured China into many pieces. It wasn't just the main contenders, the southern regions and the northern regions with the general who, or should I say president, who has proclaimed himself as emperor of China, and in the south the division between the not north but the left and the right side of political ideologies. And we still haven't discussed about what's happening in between the north and the south, the middle lands, and also going further west of China. There's still very large pieces of territory that hasn't been spoken about. What's going to happen to them during all of this chaotic mess. And yeah, the left and right ideologies cannot seem to coexist, even with the notion by Sun Yat-sen that he wants to incorporate pieces from all these different ideologies and make a brand new way of governing, of ideological expression, I should say, and implementation. This man was a chameleon, like I said before. He went back and forth on many things, so you couldn't really tell where he stood. He was powerful politically, and he was respected because of the things that he had been championing over the years, and also getting exiled and coming back, and further increasing his notoriety amongst Chinese people in the southern regions and also in the northern regions when he was the president, and then he stepped down and Yun Shikai became the president. So yeah, the reason why in the southern regions it was, should I say, peaceful to some degree is because Sun Yat-sen tried to keep them together by playing on both sides of the field. He didn't really choose a side, and maybe that was his mistake. Maybe he should have chosen a side and keep to it, and then try to convince the other side to also join them. I don't know. He's respected, so maybe it might have worked. But yeah, the Chinese are really going throughout their own revolution, their own transformation from what they used to be under a monarchy, and heading into a republic, whether it's going to be one of a socialist, communist ideals, or one of liberal capitalism and democratic kind of society. And yeah, we already know the future, like right now, what happened with China, right? We know that they are a communist state, but back then anything could have happened, really. Anything could have happened. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for today. If you like the video, remember to give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye bye.